I'm Marti Gould Cummings, and this is Marti Talks. We're chatting with your favorite stars, queens, and politicians to get all the tea on all things political. On today's episode, we are chatting with the former First Gentleman of South Bend, Indiana, Chasten Buttigieg. Today's episode, we discuss what it was like being on the presidential campaign trail, pop star Mandy Moore, and what games he's playing with Peter at home during quarantine. Okay, this episode is really, really exciting for me. Chasten and I have been following each other on Twitter since the start of the presidential campaign when Pete announced, and we've had like a pretty good relationship. He is super sweet and really kind, and full tea. Like my candidate for the presidential campaign was Elizabeth Warren. I don't think that was a secret from anybody, you know. I very much advocated for her, but I also understood the significance of having a gay couple on the cover of Time and running for office. And I think it's important when you in the Democratic Party to have dialogue with each other, even if you don't always see eye to eye on every issue. We can still be friends and friendly and work on shaping each other's platforms. So I'm really excited to chat with Chasten today. He's a really nice guy, and I think it was really awesome having Pete on the trail and Chasten out there on the trail as well. And we get to talk about fun board games and Mandy Moore. Who can ask for more? All right, so here we go. It's Chasten Buttigieg. Boom, 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 boom. We are here with another episode of Marti Talks with the incredible Chasten Buttigieg. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Marty. I am phenomenal. How are you doing?
Well, we are in deep indoor quarantine here in New York. So today, honestly, today I'm a little squirrely, but I think that's normal.
Yeah.
How are things in South Bend? What's it like there during this this quarantine, this social distance time?
You know, it's interesting that, we went from the campaign trail going 100 miles an hour to 0. And it's sort of a sick joke that we said we wish we had more time together. Now we have all this time together. We've been pretty good about only going grocery shopping every 2 weeks. So I just went this morning and I was a little alarmed at how many people were out at the grocery store and how many people weren't wearing masks and not keeping a 6-foot distance. So I hope folks are taking those recommendations a little bit more seriously. But, other than that, we've been enjoying like walking the dogs every day and cooking every day and really catching up on time that we didn't have on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like, thank God for we have 2 dogs also, and our dog parks in New York are now closed to protect people.
Yeah.
But thank God we have the dogs to be able to take on walks to just get some air and some outside time. It's been a little crazy. Are your stores doing the lines outside with the 6 feet?
No, they don't really constitute that here in South Bend. Even at our like little local co-op, there's usually not that many people there. But people have been pretty good about keeping space there. I was at the larger grocery store this morning where folks were a little bit more crammed. It's just not as big as New York City, so it's not that much of a concern.
Yeah, it's super scary. I know I want to talk to you a little bit about, I'm on the board of directors for Ali Fournier Center for Homeless LGBTQ youth, and I know you've done some stuff with them as well. So that's one of like the big things we're advocating here in the city is helping people experiencing homelessness, especially through this time because they're not able to quarantine or self-isolate the way other people are. How did you get involved with Ali Fournier Center or doing homeless outreach?
Yeah, so when the campaign kicked off, I said I wanted to be as helpful as possible, but I really wanted to focus on a few different areas, some that were really personal to me. So when I came out, I ran away from home, was terrified, absolutely certain that I would, lose everything, and was really embarrassed about, letting my parents down. And I grew up in Northern Michigan. So everything that I had learned about being gay was that I was wrong. And when the campaign started, I said I want to do as much for the LGBTQ community as I could, especially when it relates to homelessness and housing insecurity. And over the course of the campaign, I was able to visit over 100 LGBTQ centers and homeless service providers, which was fantastic. And Ali Fournier was one of the first centers we went to. And it was really just me going to the campaign saying, I want to go everywhere. I don't want to take cameras with me. I don't want to blow this up into a big press thing. I just want to go everywhere I can and listen. I think that is something that leaders could do a lot more of, is just listening. And, my experience of being queer in the Midwest is not the same experience of being queer in New York City. Same way when I was meeting with kids, in the middle of Arkansas, it's not the same. And I wanted to go everywhere and just pull up a chair and listen and talk to people and say, what do I need to know? And what do you need to see in a White House? What do you want to hear from a president? And how can we make sure we get this right?
I think that's so amazing. I think, I love that you brought your own experience with your family into your empathy for these young people. I was reading a little bit about your experience with your family today, and I'm glad that things are better now.
Yeah.
That's good. I want to. So my mom's a teacher, and I know that you're an educator as well. And I think teachers are probably some of the most underpaid, underappreciated people in our country, and we're really seeing that now. Like, parents are having to homeschool their kids because all the schools are closed, and so now we're seeing, like, oh my God, this is what teachers go through a lot. So, what is your how did you get into teaching, and what is your favorite thing about being an educator?
Yeah, right now it's kind of bittersweet because I wish I was back with my kids. And I hope. Most recently, I taught middle school, so I spent
that's the hardest age.
Yeah, 7th and 8th grade. It's funny to see some parents like melting down on the internet. Imagine teaching 100 of them a day. I went into theater from a very young age. Stuck with theater is the only place that made me feel alive, made me feel comfortable in my own skin, and it made me feel like I was, really special. And anytime I was in theater class, even through high school, that was like my safe space. That's the only place I really felt like I belonged.
Oh my God, same.
Yeah, and I stuck with, and then everyone told me I had to go get a real job. But the arts weren't, lucrative, and I was never going to get a job, and it's not a real profession. And so, I just believed that that's what I had to do. So I went to nursing school for 2 years, failed miserably in the end, and then was like, you know what, screw this. I'm going back into the arts. That's where I feel the most alive.
That's what feels you, yeah.
Found theater education through working at First Stage in Milwaukee, which is one of the nation's largest children's theaters. And then, slowly over time, the more time I spent in classrooms, realized like, oh my God, I love being in the classroom. I love when kids come into my classroom and feel alive, when they feel safe and comfortable and they're allowed to express themselves. And I was like, I think I want to be a teacher. So that's what pushed me to go back to grad school and get my master's in education. And then, 2 years later, Pete's running for president. But I was just where I felt the most of use was in the classroom. And it wasn't necessarily teaching theater or social studies and English. It was just being that person, just being that safe harbor for kids. When they came into my classroom, they knew it was okay to be themselves. And
it was like a place they could just open up, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And that is what saved my life. My theater teacher saved my life in high school. And I just wanted to be that figure. I wanted to give back to kids because I know what it's like to have teachers who don't believe in you. And that's where I just felt like I was doing the most good.
Absolutely. I mean, a teacher has such an impact on people. I remember when I was in, when I was in middle school, that like awkward age of figuring out, I knew there was something different about me. I'm pretty sure I knew I was, queer, but I didn't really have the language for it at the time. It was super awkward. Right. Being at 7th grade is the worst, right?
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable. It's just very uncomfortable. Yeah. So I remember Mrs. Hastings, Shelley Hastings. I still remember her. She still comments on my Facebook. Shelley Hastings, she was like, she's everything. She was my science teacher, and I'm the worst. Like, science is not my jam at all. But she was that teacher, even though it wasn't like the subject that she taught that I remember about her. It was her warmth, and I knew that I had a safe space in her. And I had this, I went to theater school in New York. I wanted to be a musical theater performer, and then I like accidentally became a drag queen, which accidentally made me into a politician. It was like running for council. It's like this weird trajectory.
But if you ever read a book, that needs to be the title: "Accidentally a Drag Queen."
That's literally it. But I had this
teacher. I love it.
theater school who was like, oh, you're not talented, you're never going to make it. And that made me, so there's like the opposite end of it, right? Like an educator like Mrs. Hastings really pushed me to be the best I could be. But this other teacher's negativity when I was in college pushed me to be the best that I could be, though, because I was like, you know what? I'm going to prove that I am worth something, you know? So I just think teachers have such an impact. And I love that yours is that warm, safe, positive space through theater. I saw the first show. Okay, I need to know, since we're both theater queens here. I need to know. So my very first show I ever saw was the local community theater, Churchill Community Theater. There's not even a stoplight in this town where I'm from. Okay, like and I just did a drag show there recently. They were like, "Come back and do drag." But the first show I saw was Annie. And I was maybe like 5 years old, and I was like, I want to be one of those kids up there, you know? And I went home and told my mom that, and she was like, wait, that's a show about orphans. What are you talking about? I'm not like, you know. But I was so mesmerized by it. What was that first show for you that you saw?
I think it was a production of the Phantom of the Opera, because we were in, I think it was like in elementary school, and I remember going and just being absolutely mesmerized. Like the music, the lights, the fog machine was just like, oh my God, I have to be up there.
It's epic.
What's that?
It's so campy. I love it. Phantom?
Oh, right? Yeah. And my parents just didn't know what to do with me, because I was like performing Celine Dion songs and like putting on way too many plays in the basement. And they were like, what are we going to do with this kid? And so they put me in community theater classes. And that was just like, if I could get through the day so I could go to the Old Town Playhouse, I mean, I would like jump out of my mom's car and run into the Old Town Playhouse, because I just felt alive. And it, like, I wasn't, you know, the sissy boy, like the boys were calling me in the hallways. And I wasn't afraid to like walk down the hallway because I was going to get beat up or called names. I walked into that place with such confidence because all of the teachers there made me feel like it was okay to be Chasten.
Oh God, I love that so much. That's such a great, God, I relate to that so much. My parents got me a karaoke machine when I was a kid.
Oh, yes.
It was me and the Spice Girls, and I was the sixth member of the group, you know? I was fully on tour with the Spice Girls in my mind, in my living room. And then
my poor parents had to watch Spice World way too many times with me.
Oh, it's so good. But I would, you know, I was on a basketball team, which was not great for me. And I remember taking my Spice World CD. I was so proud. I saved money to go to the local Caldors, which is this old department store. And I bought the album, and I took it to our basketball practice, and all the kids made fun of me. And I was like, why are they making fun of me? This is like the coolest thing ever. But then it's the Spice Girls. But then that summer, I took it to my theater camp. The Green Room Gang is what it was called. And they were like, yes, this is everything. And I was like, okay, I'm home. I get it.
Yep. Yeah. And it's not, you know, kids won't necessarily remember everything you taught them, but they will remember how you made them feel. And I will never forget how one of my math teachers in high school made me feel when I would like come to his desk crying because I didn't get it. And he'd be like, no, you got it. You got it. My last name before I took Peter's name was Glesman. And I'd go to his desk and he'd be like, you got it, little Glez, you got it. And I remember just like bawling that I was not learning math. And he, you know, he just made me feel just insignificant because the way he would brush me off like a kid saying, I don't get it, help me. And then I'd go to theater and Mrs. Bach would she'd open up the theater and let me eat lunch in there because I just had I didn't sit at the same table every day. I struggled to make friends. And, you know, I remember vividly how certain teachers made me feel safe and how certain teachers, especially at my most vulnerable, especially when you're a queer kid in Northern Michigan and you know where your dad keeps the guns and you know how kids make you feel every day. When I was in that boat thinking would it be easier to just leave, to end it all? My theater teacher and a few others kept me alive because every day when I stepped foot into their classroom, they told me it was okay to be myself and they made me feel safe and important and special. And that is the best thing you can do as a teacher.
Oh, I love that. Well, I would have loved to be in your class if I was a little fifth grader. Such a great teacher. And I want to talk. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your experience on the campaign trail as a teacher. First of all, like
Sure.
what a crazy year you've had.
Yeah.
Like wild. What did you? I mean, I did you ever envision like this would be your life? It's so. I mean,
No,
wow.
not at all. I mean, when I met Pete, I was in grad school, and then, he ran for a second term as mayor, and then a little over a year later, he's running for DNC chair, right? And like everything for him has changed so rapidly as well, and both things, coming out of the blue. I think, 5 years ago when I went on that first date with him, if he said, I think I'm going to run for president in 5 years, I've been like, I don't know. I mean, you're cute, but that seems like a lot. I never thought this is what I would be doing. And to be honest, at the beginning, I just felt like such an imposter. Like, how can I run with my husband to fill the shoes of Michelle Obama? Right? Like, how could I ever be, a first gentleman of the United States? And then, the more I realized out on the campaign trail, it is not pomp and circumstance. It's not, what's he wearing? It's just about how you make people feel. The same thing in the classroom. And growing up, I never felt political. I never even felt like I was allowed to be political. I never felt invited into the conversation. And then I, travel the country and meet people who feel left out and feel forgotten and overlooked. And I got to sit at the table with them and say, talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. What do you want to see in this campaign? How can this campaign best reflect you? And that's what people need in this country. They need to know that they're safe, that this country stands for them. And at first I felt like there's no way I could do that job. And then by the end of it, I loved it because it was the same thing I was doing in the classroom, going out there, talking to people and letting them know that, yes, you belong. Yes, you fit in this country. And I want to do everything in my power to make sure you feel that way.
Yeah, politics is such a wild thing. I'm running for city council, and I
Yeah.
feel my husband and I, we've been together. We've been married for almost 3 years, and together for 4. We got married pretty quickly. I knew. I was like, oh, I know, this is the one. But when we had that conversation, obviously it's not running for president; it's a much smaller scale. But it's like that conversation that I had to have with him. Okay, like I'm going to run for office, and our life is going to change a little bit, and this is, and so he had to do that same thing. Okay, how do I? He grew up Mormon. And so his experience, I don't want to like speak for him, but his experience growing up gay and Mormon. And he was like, okay, now I have this drag queen who's my spouse, who just came out as non-binary, who's running for city council. Okay, how do I have that dialogue? And that's, I think he's taken a lot of cues from you of how to,
Wow.
just, listen and hear people's issues and how, to be of service. And I think that's what politics is all. I think that's what politics should be all about, is being of service to the people, being of service, which is like being a teacher. You're being of service.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I appreciate that, but I also never want to be like the arbiter of queerness. Like I would never say that I, understand everyone's experience. And that's what made our campaign a better campaign and made me a better person, because in that work, I was going out there saying, I don't have the first idea of what it means to be Black and trans in this country. And that's why I proactively sought out those conversations and went and sat in those centers and talked with people and listened and asked, how can we be best of service? How can we get this right? Because I know, what it feels like to be left out. Add to that, being a Black youth in this country and being transgender, that was where it was super important for someone coming from, South Bend, Indiana, and growing up in Traverse City, Michigan, to going out on the campaign trail. Like my worldview and my experiences haven't shaped me into, the person who can say, I get it all. I understand it. I don't have to go out and have these conversations. I'm ready to, just stand next to my husband running for president and do nothing. It was like, no, I have to go out there and have every conversation I can and do everything in my power to make sure that everyone sees themselves reflected in this campaign.
That's right. Yeah. And I think, it's incumbent for us to really use our voice. There's an epidemic of trans women being murdered, so we have to advocate for trans rights. And also at the same time, I think it's important to highlight the achievements of trans people in our community also, and so I try to do that and work on that. But so thank you for having those conversations and listening to people, because it's bringing the conversation to millions of people who may have never heard it before.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit, and I love Mandy Moore. This is totally going in a different direction now. I
Yeah,
love Mandy Moore.
me too.
Girl, from Candy to This Is Us, okay? And you've got a
Incredible.
lot of time with Mandy Moore. What is your what is one cool thing about Mandy Moore that we might not know?
She is such a sweetheart. She came to I think she followed Pete during the DNC chair race, and she came to one of his very early events in LA. I believe the way she tells it, she was kind of hooked from the beginning. She was on Team Pete, and Pete, I was there with him, and he kind of got like rushed out of the room afterwards, and the campaign asked me to like stay around and talk to folks. I think he just like stepped out to do an interview or something. And Mandy Moore walked up to me and she's like, "Can I get a picture with you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes, Mandy Moore."
Like,
yeah. And I think we DM'd one another and we traded numbers. And she wanted to be helpful on the campaign, so she started. She came out on the road with me. Her and I did events in Florida and Louisiana together, and then she came out to Iowa. And her husband Taylor is a doll as well. And the thing I loved most about meeting them is they're just so kind. And the campaign is gruesome and it is exhausting. It's 18-hour days, and sometimes you're doing 4 states a day, and you meet so many people and you're like consumed by media and opinions, and like meeting someone like her was so refreshing, because she was in it for all the right reasons too. And even afterwards, like her and I chat all the time, like checking in on one another's pets and stuff. And it feels like I actually made a friend on the trail, which is really nice. And I love her new album, by the way.
Oh,
I have to plug that for her.
So good. She did this Instagram video the other day. I think maybe it was her husband playing guitar for her.
Yeah.
I think her voice. Oh my God, this is why she is everybody's favorite Disney princess. Okay, I think we forget she's a Disney princess. She's a Disney princess.
Her and I were walking. So we were walking through the airport, and this woman like ran up to us, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're my favorite Disney princess." And she was like wearing a Rapunzel shirt.
What?
We were flying from Orlando, and sorry, Mandy, I made her fly Southwest with me. Sorry, Mandy Moore. I can't afford to give you a private jet, Mandy. So we're in the airport, and then this woman's like fangirling, and she walks away, and I was like, "What is that like?" I mean, you're on This Is Us, you're a musician, but then like people equate you to a Disney princess because you did the voice.
Yeah, I mean that's that's iconic when you become a Disney princess. I mean, Anika Noni Rose, Lea Salonga, Jodie Benson, Mandy Moore. This is it's icon. It's icon. I want to know, because we're again both like theater lovers. Okay, favorite Broadway diva. Who's your go-to like Broadway leading lady?
Oh no. See, I got asked these questions every day on the campaign trail. Someone would be like, "What's your favorite musical? Who's your favorite composer?" And I was like, "That's too political. I don't answer political questions."
You don't want to upset anybody. You don't want to.
No matter what you say, someone disagrees with you in that room.
Okay. Well,
I could be like, "Oh, I love Andrew Lloyd Webber," and someone in the back room be like, "Ah," like it doesn't matter where you go.
It doesn't matter. I love mine. Audra McDonald is like.
Okay, that's what I was gonna say.
Audra's goddess. Okay, she's goddess. She's stunning. She's also one of the kindest human beings. Laura Benanti, she's going to be on the podcast. Goddess.
I love what she's doing with kids online right now.
It's amazing. Getting them to do their high school musicals. I'm the biggest Stephanie J. Block fan ever. Obsessed with her. But yeah, I think what Laura's doing is so good, because you remember what it was like, your high school musical. Like that's such an incredible experience. So to not be able to do it is so sad for these kids. So now they're able to perform it.
They're so sweet. They're just, I mean, they bring tears to my eyes. I was talking to Pete about this the other day. Like, can you imagine being in high school and like everything is like built to senior year, right? And you miss your prom and your musical and graduation. I mean, didn't have a lot of those things, but I know that it's so important for so many kids. I feel so bad for them, and I love that they have that platform now to share it.
Yeah, she's a good gal. Oh my god, I would have been so mad if I missed my prom. I was that like kid in high school where I did the musicals. I had to be the president of every club. I was on the prom committee. You know, all that
Of
stuff.
course you were. I never got
Oh,
to go to prom. I never went to prom ever.
really?
Never
Oh,
ever.
we got to throw you a prom. Pete has to take you
You
to
know,
prom.
I went and saw the prom on Broadway,
So good.
and
That's
I did
Hummel.
not. I did not expect. Like I thought it was going to be really fun, but then it like really hit a chord with me because I never got that experience because I was terrified of being like you couldn't be out in high school, so you couldn't
Yeah.
be yourself. And then there's that song at the end of Act One, like "Tonight Belongs to Us," where basically like all the straight kids are like dancing around her, like taunting her that like tonight's our night and you don't belong. I just like broke down in tears. I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I felt. Like
Yeah.
all the straight kids got to have their dance, and I wasn't even invited or allowed to be myself there. And I'm so glad it's becoming a movie and it's touring, and I'm so glad more kids are going to be able to see that show.
It's such a beautiful story. And Caitlin and Izzy did such a good job of portraying those two characters, the leads in it, and then Beth Level's character. It was just a beautiful. Yeah. Well, I go to a lot of Broadway shows in drag because I have to go to work right after. You know, the drag shows 11:30. So I'm at the prom in full drag. My mascara's running. My lash is coming off. I look a hot mess, and I'm like, oh my god, this show just wrecked me. But it's important. But that's the beauty of theater, right? Like it's telling these stories that are needed to be told. You know,
Yeah.
at first you have to think, oh, this is going to be a silly show, and then it's like it's so heartfelt and important.
Yeah,
So
I'm so glad they did it, and I'm so glad again that it's touring. I wonder what it was like when you were in the audience. I was just thinking, like, can you imagine being like an ensemble member, like looking at the audience, and being like, who is that sad drag queen?
oh my god, I went to see Michael Urie invited me to see him in a Torch Song when it was on Broadway, and it's about a drag queen, Arthur, who does drag. Harvey Firestein wrote it, and I was in full drag, and in the first act he says the word drag queen a lot, and every time he said it, this woman next to me, she would, in like the biggest way, I wish the people like listening could see like that, but she would literally like lean forward and turn her entire body to look at me to see how I would react to this character saying drag queen. I'm like, yes, girl, we know, yes, there's one next to you.
We're all here. We all know.
I always go to the theater and drag. People love it. I have to make sure that I wear small wigs though to not block people.
I thought it'd be like, it's not that I have a problem with the drag queen, it's just the drag queen's updo.
The hair is too big. That's exactly it. Oh my god.
He's so much out of towner, like, I don't know what to do.
But I feel like that it's such like a New York experience thing for people. Like, oh, there's a drag queen at this show. Okay, cool. I love it. Well, we have to have Pete take you to a prom. We got to find a prom for you to go to. That's my goal for this year. Get you to a prom. Have one.
So we have a Pride prom here in South Bend, and I think it was like the second year we were dating. We swung by, but it was like, the mayor and the first gentleman are here. Like you can't like have to move, right? Like we came and like said some hellos, and we're like, hoorah, Pride prom, hooray! But like when you're mayor, and you can't just like break it down. So
break it down, yeah. Oh, well, what do you guys? What is your like? What's your? Are you guys like watching movies or playing board games, or what are you guys doing in quarantine?
So I love Peter dearly, but he is such a schedule person. Like he has to have a schedule, even for leisure. And right now, I am enjoying this privileged moment of being able to do nothing. And the come down from like the campaign was really hard for the first few weeks. Like very hard to have a normal conversation. Always like feeling like
there's so many people all the time, and now you're at home. Yeah,
right. And it's like it's hard to read because I feel that constant tug. Like it's time to go. Got to go do something. But now like starting to settle into it. So like every day we cook dinner together. Every day we walk the dogs. At least once a day, sometimes twice a day, which is great.
How's Buddy? Good?
Oh, Buddy is thriving. And he loves having his dad's home. Truman doesn't care about anybody. It's so, and he like Pete is like reorganizing his office, and we've moved all this furniture. And this is the first time in 5 years we've been able to like put our house together. And But he like go, right? Like now he's organizing the office and like doing all this work. Like he was on The View this morning while I was like in my pajamas, like watching television. And for me, it's just like readjusting. But we're starting to watch some shows, which is great because I didn't get to watch TV for like a year and a half.
Oh my gosh, this week really hit hard. The week we're recording this, Modern Family's finale was last night, which wrecked me.
Schitt's Creek.
Schitt's Creek wrecked me. But it's so crazy, like you spend 7 years with one show and 11 years with another. I've seen every episode of both, and then they're just done, and you're like, oh my god, you're like saying goodbye to friends. I was a wreck, sobbing. I'm so grateful to Dan Levy for the. I mean, he's incredible.
He's remarkable, and Jesse Tyler Ferguson. I got to talk to him on my Instagram.
Oh, I watched that yesterday. Yeah. Well, Justin, his husband, is like the sweetest human being you'll ever meet. He's so nice.
He's incredible. I loved getting to know them, and just being like that show has been on for what was it, like 11 years?
11 years, yeah.
So I mean, Jesse and I were talking about this. Like that show was on before marriage equality, and
for many years before.
That visibility, can you imagine? Like I told him, like that visibility for me was affirming. It was like, oh, it's on TV. Like this is, I feel one step closer to being like feeling safer in my country and feeling affirmed for my existence.
Well, that's why it's so like representation matters, right? Representation on TV, representation from teachers in schools, representation in politics. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. It helps move the dialogue forward. So I don't want to keep you too much longer, but thank you so much for what you're doing, and have fun in this year. With Pete and the dogs, and I recommend Blake. I'm looking at it right now. Blake and I have been playing Risk. It's like our new board game. I've really gotten into board games in this. So.
That is like the one thing Pete and I played on the campaign show because we could play it like in different cities. You can play it.
I want to show you. This is like, I've become obsessed. The people at home can't see this, but I've become obsessed with this board game. And I'm such a competitive person that Blake wins every time. And we also play Phase 10 a lot, the card game. And he always wins. And I get so mad, like angry.
Oh, that's a big thing in this household because you can get the app and you can play.
Oh yeah.
Digitally. We just started playing Monopoly again because I love kicking Pete's butt at Monopoly. And it takes forever, and like we don't have anything to do.
Do you have the app for Monopoly or the board game?
Yeah, I have the app, and then you cast it to the television, and all you have to do is like hit the buttons. And
you're gonna get that. We have the. I like buying like kitschy kind of board games. So I have like the Golden Girls Monopoly, and we have the Disney Monopoly and all that stuff. Yeah, but I always lose, and I get so mad. It's fine. I'll get over it.
That time. Well, Marty, thanks for the conversation. And thank you for your activism and your visibility in New York. You're a great follow on Twitter because you help all of us stay up to date and in the loop. And I really appreciate everything that you've done as well.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Love to you and the dogs and Pete, and stay safe and healthy. And thank you so much. Thanks, babe.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Marti Talks. This podcast is presented by The Only Productions, Mitch Farino, and Bob the Drag Queen. Editing is also done by Mitch Farino and Bob the Drag Queen. Check out other podcasts, videos, and live events at theonlyproductions.com. Make sure you're registered to vote, tell your friends and family to register to vote, and get to the polls. Our democracy and our lives are at stake. Thanks again. You can find me on all social media at Marti G. Cummings. Until next time, spread love and don't be a dick.